The air in Asgard was thick with the hum of divine energy, a constant reminder of the power that flowed through its golden halls. Valhalla stood tall, its spires piercing the eternal twilight as the gods of the Norse pantheon gathered for a feast. The mead flowed freely, and the laughter of warriors echoed through the halls. At the center of it all was Thor, the god of thunder, his booming voice carrying tales of his latest exploits. Mjolnir rested at his side, its runes glowing faintly with the promise of destruction and creation. Thor's hammer was more than a weapon. It was an extension of his very being, a symbol of his strength and his duty to protect the realms. He raised it high, and the hall erupted in cheers, the sound reverberating like thunder. But not all eyes were on Thor. In the shadows, Loki, the trickster god, watched with a sly grin. His mind was already weaving a plan, one that would sow chaos and amuse him for centuries to come. He had grown bored of the monotony of Asgard's feasts and the predictability of its gods. It was time for a little mischief. Meanwhile, far across the cosmos on the peak of Mount Olympus, Zeus sat upon his throne, his thunderbolt crackling in his hand. The Greek gods were in the midst of a heated debate, their voices rising like the storms Zeus commanded. The topic of discussion was power, who wielded it, who deserved it, and who could claim supremacy. Zeus, ever the strategist, listened intently. His thunderbolt, forged by the Cyclopes, was a weapon of unparalleled destruction, a symbol of his authority over the heavens. But whispers had reached his ears, whispers of a hammer in the north, a weapon said to rival even his own. It was Loki who brought those whispers to Zeus. Disguised as a humble traveler, he appeared before the king of the gods, his words dripping with honeyed malice. "Great Zeus," Loki began, bowing low, "I bring news from the north. Thor, the so-called god of thunder, boasts that his hammer, Mjolnir, is mightier than your thunderbolt. He claims it can shatter mountains and command the very winds, while your weapon is but a mere spark in comparison." Zeus' eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his thunderbolt. The hall fell silent as the other gods turned to watch, their curiosity piqued. "Is that so?" Zeus said, his voice calm but laced with danger. "And does this Thor believe he can challenge me?" Loki's grin widened. "He does, my lord. In fact, he has already begun to gather his forces, preparing for a confrontation that will decide once and for all which pantheon is superior." The lie was bold, but Loki knew how to play on the pride of gods. Zeus, ever the proud ruler, could not let such a challenge go unanswered. "Very well," Zeus declared, rising from his throne. "If Thor seeks a contest of power, he shall have it. Send word to Asgard. Let him know that Zeus of Olympus demands a meeting. We shall see whose weapon is truly the deadliest." The messenger, a swift-footed nymph, was dispatched to Asgard, her journey swift and unerring. When she arrived, the gods of the north were still in the midst of their revelry. Thor, his cheeks flushed with mead, greeted her with a hearty laugh. "What news from Olympus?" he asked, his voice booming. The nymph delivered Zeus' message, her words cutting through the noise like a blade. The hall fell silent as Thor processed the challenge. "A contest of power," Thor repeated, his eyes narrowing. He glanced at Mjolnir, its runes glowing faintly in response to his thoughts. "Very well. Tell Zeus I accept his challenge. We shall meet on neutral ground, and the world shall witness the true might of Mjolnir." The nymph bowed and departed, leaving the gods of Asgard in a state of uneasy anticipation. Odin, the All-Father, watched from his throne, his one eye gleaming with wisdom and concern. "Be cautious, my son," he warned. "This challenge may be more than it seems. There are forces at work here that even I cannot foresee." Thor nodded, but his pride would not let him back down. "Do not worry, father. Mjolnir has never failed me, and it will not fail me now." As the gods prepared for the journey to the meeting place, Loki watched from the shadows, his grin widening. The stage was set, the players in place. All that remained was to watch the chaos unfold. Little did Thor and Zeus know, the true battle was not between their weapons, but between their pride and the cunning of a trickster who thrived on discord. And so the spark of discord was lit, a flame that would soon engulf the realms in a contest of power, pride, and the very nature of divinity. The meeting place was a vast, windswept plain, suspended between the realms of Asgard and Olympus. The sky above churned with dark clouds, as if the heavens themselves were uncertain of the outcome. Thor stood at one end of the plain, Mjolnir gripped tightly in his hand, its runes glowing faintly with anticipation. Across from him, Zeus loomed, his thunderbolt crackling with raw energy, its light casting long shadows across the ground. Between them stood a mortal village, nestled in a valley below. The villagers, unaware of the divine contest about to unfold, went about their daily lives. But the air was heavy with tension, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Loki, ever the observer, watched from a nearby hill, his grin widening as the storm gathered strength. "Let the games begin," he whispered to himself. The rules of the first trial were simple. Thor and Zeus would each use their weapons to quell a raging storm that threatened to destroy the village. The storm, conjured by the combined powers of both pantheons, was unlike any the mortal world had seen. Lightning split the sky, and winds howled like the cries of the damned. Thor stepped forward first, raising Mjolnir high. The hammer's runes flared to life, and the storm seemed to pause, as if recognizing its master. With a mighty swing, Thor brought Mjolnir down, and a shockwave of energy rippled through the air. The wind slowed and the rain lessened, but the storm was far from tamed. "Is that all?" Zeus taunted, his voice carrying over the roar of the storm. "Allow me to show you true power." Zeus raised his thunderbolt, and the sky erupted in a blinding flash of light. The lightning struck the heart of the storm, dispersing the clouds and calming the winds. The villagers below cheered, their voices rising in gratitude. But Thor was not deterred. He stepped forward again, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the task at hand. This time, he did not rely on brute force alone. Instead, he called upon the deeper powers of Mjolnir, the ones that balanced creation and destruction. With a gentle swing, Thor sent a wave of energy through the storm, not to destroy it, but to transform it. The dark clouds parted, revealing a clear blue sky, and the rain turned into a gentle mist that nourished the earth. The villagers, now bathed in sunlight, looked up in awe. Zeus watched, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he admitted, though his tone was laced with skepticism. But power is not just about control. It is about precision, strategy. As if to prove his point, Zeus raised his thunderbolt again, this time targeting a distant mountain. The lightning struck with surgical precision, carving a path through the rock and creating a new river that would bring life to the valley below. The villagers, now witnessing the birth of a new water source, fell to their knees in reverence. Thor frowned, his pride stung. "You may have saved them today," he said, his voice low, "but at what cost? Your power is destructive, Zeus. It leaves scars on the land and the people," Zeus smirked. "And yours is fleeting, Thor. A gentle rain may soothe, but it cannot protect. True power is the ability to shape the world, even if it means breaking it first." The tension between the two gods was palpable, their differing philosophies clashing as fiercely as their weapons. Loki, watching from the hill, could barely contain his glee. "Oh, this is better than I imagined," he muttered. "Pride against pride, power against power. Let's see how far they'll go." As the first trial drew to a close, the gods returned to their respective camps, each lost in thought. Thor sat by a fire, staring into the flames as he pondered Zeus' words. Was his power truly enough? Or was there something he was missing? Zeus, meanwhile, stood atop a cliff, his thunderbolt crackling in his hand. He gazed out at the horizon, his mind racing. Thor's ability to balance creation and destruction was unexpected, and it left him uneasy. The first trial had ended in a draw, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. And Loki, ever the trickster, was ready to nurture them. As night fell, the storm clouds returned, darker and more menacing than before. The second trial would take place in the underworld, a realm of shadows and secrets. And there, the true nature of power would be tested once more. The path to the underworld was a treacherous one, a winding descent through jagged cliffs and rivers of fire. Thor and Zeus stood at the edge of the abyss, the air thick with the scent of sulfur and the distant wails of the damned. The second trial would test not only their power but their resolve. For the underworld was a place where even gods feared to tread. The task was clear. Retrieve the Eidolon, a sacred artifact said to hold the power to reveal the true nature of one's soul. The artifact was guarded by Hades, the ruler of the underworld, a god as cunning as he was ruthless. Loki, ever the shadow, followed at a distance, his presence unnoticed by the two gods. He had his own plans for the Eidolon, and the chaos it could unleash. Thor stepped forward first, Mjolnir glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is no place for mortals," he muttered, his voice low. "But we are not mortals." Zeus smirked, his thunderbolt crackling with energy. "Let us see if your hammer can light the way, Thor." The underworld is no realm for brute strength. The two gods began their descent, the ground beneath their feet crumbling as they ventured deeper. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to come alive, whispering secrets and lies. The first challenge came in the form of the river Styx, its dark waters swirling with the souls of the dead. The ferryman, Charon, stood at the shore, his skeletal hand outstretched. "A toll must be paid," Charon rasped, his voice echoing like the wind through a hollow tomb. Thor frowned, gripping Mjolnir tightly. "We are gods. We do not pay tolls," Charon's hollow eyes gleamed. "Even gods must abide by the laws of the underworld." Zeus stepped forward, his thunderbolt crackling. "And what if we refuse?" Before Charon could respond, Loki appeared, his grin wide and mischievous. "Allow me," he said, tossing a golden coin to the ferryman. "Consider it a gift from a humble traveler." Thor and Zeus exchanged wary glances but said nothing as Charon gestured for them to board his boat. The journey across the Styx was silent, the weight of the underworld pressing down on them. When they reached the other side, the path split into two. One led to the fields of Asphodel, where the souls of the ordinary dead wandered. The other led to Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, where the Eidolon was said to be hidden. "We must choose," Zeus said, his voice tense. Thor stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "The artifact is in Tartarus." "I can feel it," Zeus nodded, though his expression was grim. "Then Tartarus it is." The descent into Tartarus was a harrowing journey. The air grew heavier, and the screams of the damned echoed through the caverns. The walls seemed to close in, and the shadows twisted into grotesque shapes. At last they reached the heart of Tartarus, a vast chamber lit by an eerie green light. In the center stood Hades, his dark robes flowing like smoke. In his hand, he held the Eidolon, a shimmering orb that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. "You dare enter my domain," Hades hissed, his voice like the crackle of flames. "The Eidolon is not yours to take." Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir raised. "We do not seek to take it by force, Hades. We seek to prove our worth." Hades laughed, a sound that sent shivers down even a god's spine. "Worth? You think your petty contest matters here? The underworld does not bow to the whims of the living." Zeus stepped forward, his thunderbolt crackling. "We are not here to bow, Hades. We are here to claim what is rightfully ours." Hades' eyes narrowed, and the chamber grew darker. "Then prove your worth if you dare." The trial began with a test of will. Hades summoned the shades of the dead, their ghostly forms swirling around Thor and Zeus, whispering doubts and fears. Thor felt the weight of his past mistakes, the lives he had failed to save. But he clenched Mjolnir tightly, drawing strength from its power. "I am Thor, god of thunder," he declared, his voice steady. "I will not falter." Zeus, too, faced his own demons. The shades whispered of his failures as a ruler, the lives he had destroyed in his quest for power. But he raised his thunderbolt, its light banishing the shadows. "I am Zeus, king of the gods," he roared. "I will not be undone." Hades watched, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he admitted. "But the true test lies ahead." The final challenge was a battle of wits. Hades presented them with a riddle, one that only the worthy could solve. "What is the true nature of power?" Hades asked, his voice echoing through the chamber. Thor and Zeus exchanged glances, their minds racing. "Power is strength," Thor said, his voice firm. "The ability to protect and defend." "Power is control," Zeus countered. "The ability to shape the world as you see fit." Hades smiled, a cold and calculating expression. "And yet you both fail to see the truth. Power is balance. The ability to create and destroy, to rule and to serve. Only when you understand this will you be worthy of the Eidolon." The orb in his hand began to glow, its light filling the chamber. Thor and Zeus felt a surge of energy, as if the artifact itself was testing them. In that moment, they realized the truth. Power was not about strength or control, but about understanding. It was about the balance between creation and destruction, between pride and humility. Hades nodded, his expression softening. "You have proven your worth," he said, handing the Eidolon to Thor. But remember, the true test is yet to come. As Thor and Zeus left the underworld, the artifact in hand, they felt a sense of unease. The trial had revealed more than they had expected, and the seeds of doubt had taken root. Loki, watching from the shadows, grinned. "Oh, this is far from over," he whispered. "The true chaos has yet to begin." The great hall of Valhalla stood as a testament to the might and majesty of the Norse gods. Its golden walls shimmered in the eternal twilight, and the air was thick with the hum of divine energy. But today, the hall was not filled with the laughter of warriors or the clinking of mead horns. Instead, it was the stage for the final trial, a contest that would determine the fate of two pantheons. Thor and Zeus stood at opposite ends of the hall, their weapons glowing with power. Mjolnir pulsed with the energy of creation and destruction, while Zeus' Thunderbolt crackled with raw, unbridled force. The tension between them was palpable, their pride and determination fueling the air with an electric charge. Loki, ever the shadow, watched from the shadows of the hall, his grin wide and mischievous. The eidolon rested in his hands, its light flickering like a dying star. He had his own plans for the artifact, and the chaos it could unleash. Odin, the All-Father, sat upon his throne, his one eye gleaming with wisdom and concern. "This trial will test not only your power but your understanding of its true nature," he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "Let the final trial begin." The rules were simple. Thor and Zeus would face each other in a duel, but the true challenge lay not in defeating the other, but in understanding the balance of power. The eidolon would judge their worth, and its light would reveal the truth. The duel began with a clash of titans. Thor swung Mjolnir with all his might, the hammer's energy rippling through the air like a shockwave. Zeus countered with his Thunderbolt, the lightning striking with precision and force. The hall shook with the impact, the very foundations of Asgard trembling under the strain. But as the battle raged, it became clear that their weapons were not just tools of destruction. Mjolnir's energy began to shift, its power balancing between creation and destruction. The hammer's runes glowed brighter, and the air around Thor seemed to hum with life. Zeus, too, felt a change in his Thunderbolt. The raw energy began to focus, the lightning striking with purpose and intent. The Thunderbolt's light grew sharper, cutting through the chaos with precision. Loki watched, his grin widening. "Oh, this is better than I imagined," he whispered. "But it's not enough." "Not yet." He raised the eidolon, its light pulsing with an otherworldly energy. The artifact began to glow brighter, its light filling the hall and enveloping Thor and Zeus. In that moment, the two gods felt a surge of energy, as if the eidolon was testing them. Visions flashed before their eyes, visions of their past, their mistakes, and their triumphs. They saw the lives they had saved and the lives they had destroyed. They saw the balance of power, the delicate line between creation and destruction. Thor was the first to understand. He lowered Mjolnir, the hammer's energy calming. "Power is not about strength or control," he said, his voice steady. "It's about balance. The ability to create and destroy, to protect and to serve." Zeus, too, lowered his Thunderbolt, the lightning fading. "And it's about understanding," he added. "The ability to see the consequences of our actions and to wield our power with wisdom." The eidolon's light grew brighter, its energy filling the hall. The artifact began to rise, its light enveloping Thor and Zeus. In that moment, they felt a surge of unity, their powers merging into a single harmonious force. But Loki was not done. He stepped forward, his grin wide and mischievous. "Oh, how touching," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But you forget one thing. Power is also about chaos." He raised the eidolon, its light shifting from a pure, harmonious glow to a dark, chaotic energy. The artifact began to pulse, its light growing darker and more menacing. Thor and Zeus turned to face Loki, their weapons at the ready. "What are you doing, Loki?" Thor demanded, his voice filled with anger. Loki laughed, a sound that sent shivers down even a god's spine. "What I do best," he replied. Sowing chaos. The eidolon's light grew darker, its energy spreading through the hall. The walls began to crack, and the air grew heavy with the scent of sulfur. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist, as if the underworld itself was breaking through. Thor and Zeus exchanged glances, their minds racing. They knew they had to act fast. "We must combine our powers," Thor said, his voice firm. Only together can we stop him. Zeus nodded, his expression grim. Agreed. The two gods raised their weapons, their energies merging into a single, powerful force. Mjolnir and the Thunderbolt clashed, their light filling the hall and banishing the darkness. The Eidolon's light began to fade, its energy dissipating. Loki screamed in frustration, his form twisting and warping as the artifact's power consumed him. "No," he cried, his voice filled with rage. "This is not how it ends," but it was too late. The combined power of Thor and Zeus was too much for even Loki to withstand. The Eidolon's light faded, and Loki was banished to a realm beyond time and space, his laughter echoing through the hall. The hall fell silent, the air heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. Thor and Zeus lowered their weapons, their energies calming. Odin stepped forward, his one eye gleaming with pride. "You have proven your worth," he declared. "Not just as gods, but as beings who understand the true nature of power." Thor and Zeus exchanged glances, their expressions softening. They had faced their greatest challenge and emerged victorious, not through strength or control, but through understanding and unity. As the hall began to fill with the laughter of warriors and the clinking of mead horns, Thor and Zeus stood side by side, their weapons at their sides. They had learned the true nature of power, and in doing so had forged a bond that would last for eternity. But as the camera pans out, a faint rumble is heard in the distance, and a shadowy figure is seen emerging from the void where Loki was banished. The screen fades to black with the words, "The whispers of lore are far from over."